Welcome to Positive Talk Radio. Our goal is simple: to explore evolving ideas one conversation at a time. So, stay with us as right now we present. Good afternoon, everybody. Are you an entrepreneur? Are you a businessman? Or do you have a company? Are you a CEO or a CFO or one of those big title lettered things that some people are? And if you're any of those, or if you're, I don't know, a pastor, or you're running a household, the gentleman that we have with us today, John Taylor McEntire, is with us. He's written a book, The Keys to Authenticity, along with a good friend of the show, Jack Canfield, and he is also working to help people understand how to um, build a better community, a better career, a better, whether it's individually or collectively. He does all those things. He's worked around the world, and he's taken a little bit of this and a little bit of that from this culture, from that culture, and he's put it all together in a comprehensive way. It's a program that he calls Sync, and we're going to get into all of that in just a second. But first, I have to say hello to John. John, how are you?
I'm great, Kevin. Nice to be with you again.
Yeah,
Thanks
it's awesome to have you back, sir. I've been looking forward to this because, business is one of those things, and actually, human behavior, I think, is more along the lines of what it is that you do, because we are all trying to do the best that we can, or think we're doing the best that we can, but a lot of times we get lost in all the stuff that is required of us, and I'm glad that you wrote the book, Keys to Authenticity, and I guess that's a good place to start. Why don't we start there? How did that book come to be?
Well, this is the book, and the book is an anthology, and I happen to be a trainer for the Success Principles underneath Jack Canfield, and had an opportunity to participate in this book. I'm the second chapter after Jack, and there's another 15 or 20 that come after that. But it's really an anthology about how authenticity is really important in a lot of different aspects. And the way I was looking at it was from the viewpoint of inventors and entrepreneurs and what they need to do to actually be authentic, and why authenticity is really important, especially in this day and age.
It is more important than ever because information is more readily available than ever. And it's hard sometimes to keep everybody, as I've said in the past, rowing in the same direction and keeping everybody working together, understanding what the bigger mission is and what their role in it is. And that is a lot of what it is that you are doing, is you're helping people understand how to put all that together and then hold it together, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that culture is really key here. But you've got the different cultures of the different groups within even your own organization that you need to have understand and get an idea as to how do those people think in the finance office versus those in the sales office versus those who maybe manufacture a product. They all think differently. They all talk differently, and you need to kind of get them all on the same page before you can actually get people to congeal.
Well, it's interesting because if you are like an engineer or an internal auditor, your brain tends to think in a certain way that is different fundamentally from how a manager will look at things or a sales guy will look at things. So there can become conflict within an organization because the different people have got different agendas. And your program helps bring those agendas together. How does it do that?
Well, just going off of what you were just talking about, how everybody kind of thinks differently, I have what's called the orbs of influence. Sometimes people will call it a spheres of influence or whatever, but I call them orbs because it's more organic. Spheres are like, kind of completely, round and uniform and such. But orbs is something that's organic, and it's something that's different for each person. So you've got your orb in the middle, and then you're looking at all these different orbs, and some are closer than others, and you're trying to actually pull them together. So when you're learning about these orbs, you're trying to understand how does that other org think. So if it's like me dealing with the finance office, I need to understand how those accountants think, and understand what makes them tick, and what are the things that I should be using to talk to them, and what are the things that I shouldn't be using to talk to them with, because that language is really important to get them onto the same page, speaking the same language. um, part of the same language is trying to deal with the curse of Babel. Okay, and so we're trying to alleviate that activity where all these languages are out there, everybody's speaking something different, and somehow you're disconnecting because you're not on in the same wavelength. You're not speaking the same language. So you get everybody, you understand what they're thinking first. You try to help them understand what your issue is that you're talking about, and then you start talking the same language, and you help them understand why what you're doing is important to them. Okay, and why what they're doing is important to you, and so you get this act of commonality uh, together, and people start to realize, hey, those people in that office are not as weird as I thought they were, or they're not off their rocker. They're actually going towards the same mission. And when we realize that we're going towards the same mission, but we each have different pieces of that puzzle to get there, then we're able to connect those and actually make them be much better than just the pieces if they were alone.
Sometimes doesn't it start with the CEO and the upper management folks? Because sometimes folks will set up a company where they create adversarial positions. Like the sales guys are um, in one camp, and the internal auditors and the accountants of are in a different camp. And the sales guy will say, "He's not letting me do my job, so I can't sell this guy." And the accountant says, "That guy's money's no good, and he's not going to pay you once you sell him." How do you bring those? Because some companies are actually set up that way.
Well, and
How
I've actually been in some of those companies, which is actually one of the reasons why I created what I did. And that is because the ones that actually, where the CEO is more amenable to make sure everybody's kind of coming together, those companies do well, and do much better, especially in the long term, than those companies that are more short term minded and really just profit oriented. So if you look at my company name on the screen, it's Mutual Prosperity. And then the reason for that name is that I believe that everybody has a purpose here, and everybody's does things and thinks differently for reasons, many reasons. And if everybody thought the same, if everybody did the same thing, then there wouldn't be any variety in this world, and there wouldn't be any way to actually create something that, when unified, makes something so completely out of this world that actually solves people's problems. You wouldn't have that inventiveness, that innovation. You wouldn't have the ability to actually tackle problems. I mean, if you look at the moon landing, that was a really big project, a big mission for the United States, and it pulled the whole U.S. together,
it did.
and something really incredible was able to happen with that. So that's of course a long time ago, but that same type of feeling needs to happen within organizations, whether it's a company, a startup, whether it's a school, a community, even a governmental body. If everybody's actually on the same page, speaking the same language, and they have the people at the top that are actually trying to make it so that everybody's working well together, then things have a much better chance of being successful.
I've worked in companies like that as well. I call it the downward spiral,
Yes.
where which in my world, I was in the restaurant business, so I've worked with many restaurants that were very successful, and then they went away from what got them there in the first place, because an accountant showed up and said, "Well, you know how much money we can save if we don't sell cod, if we sell whitefish? It almost tastes the same. It's not as good, but it's close." And somebody buys into that, and so now the customer walks in and he's going, I can't quite put my finger on it, but this
Something's
just
different
isn't
here.
as good as it was last time,
Yeah.
because it's cod is a particular flavor, and the way, and that happened to me in a Mexican restaurant. If you can believe it, somebody came along and sold them on a low fat cheese in a Mexican restaurant. The stuff didn't even melt. But there are and that one company also went down. So it's important that everybody thinks in terms of the same. They want the same quality, the same, and to move in the same direction. But that's hard to do sometimes, isn't it?
It is, and I think that what's interesting is that you can look at any organization, and it ebbs and flows in regards to whether or not they're actually synchronizing together well or not. I have this system called Sync, SYNC, and it's synchronize yourself naturally within your community. And basically, the synchronized part, is basically to coordinate and align two or more things together, and making them function well. So this is like bridging gaps, building a chord, creating the consensus that goes along with that. It needs to be timely, continual, and it needs to have continuity within the community. And I have different tools in regards to that, which actually come from my time when I was in Japan, because Japan is very well known for their consensus building techniques, such as the Vingi Seido system, which helps companies build policy within their organization. But they go from the middle managers down to the regular workers, okay, and they try and get an understanding as to what is actually happening there, and then they pull it up to the top. But as they're going about, they're taking it at all these different levels, and finally, when it gets to the top, it's already been vetted, and the top just has to give it their blessing, and everybody's already on board with it. So it takes a little bit more time than the regular U.S. system of the top down, but the ultimate goal is that you've got buy-in from the beginning, and people just start running with it. And that's why the Japanese have always been really good with their, especially mechanical things and factory type activities.
Now,
So
if you can,
that's
go ahead.
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, if you look on your screen, you can kind of see how you've got it mapped out on how it works. Could you kind of go over that a bit?
Sure. So we talked about synchronize. Then we have the yourself, which is personalize. And this is to make something individualized or tailored to a specific person's preferences or needs. And so this is where the piece of authenticity comes in place. And that's why I was involved with that book on authenticity. And there needs to be a high level of integrity. There needs to be empathy. The person needs to be empathetic. They need to be kind and caring. And we're talking about leadership. I really believe that they need to be servant leadership. Okay, there needs to be somebody who's actually trying to, they're going to go in and work as hard as the others, maybe even harder, and they're going to try and make it easier for those people to do their jobs. And so it's servant leadership, and there's continual learning and introspection and constant improvement that comes about with that. And so some of the things that I've taken off from here is in the Philippines, and I don't know, how many people in our audience have traveled overseas and everything, but when you go like to the Middle East, where I worked for 9 years, and other places around the world, there's a lot of people from the Philippines that are in the service industry, and I have always been totally amazed by how happy these people are, and how good they are at service and everything. And so I learned about the 7 M's of service that they have in the Philippines, and the M's are all words from Tagalog, but you can understand that there are different things about how the customer is important, and how you need to make sure that you're thinking ahead, and you're making yourself presentable, and all these different things that make things well. So that's where the servant leadership and the service side of things come in. And if you create yourself that way, then you're able to personalize this in a very important way. So then the naturally, it's naturalized, and so you have to naturalize this. And so how do you naturalize this? You're basically establishing, a foreign species, okay, something foreign going into a new environment. So you're trying to naturalize that. And so how do you do that? You make it natural. You make it integral. You internalize it, and then you recognize the community where it's going to go into, and you appreciate the diversity. So different things that I bring in here are things about intuition. And in Korea, there's a thing called nunchi, and this is the Korean art of reading people and situations. And then also, I don't know how many people here have read Sun Tzu, The Art of War, and it's a military general who wrote this, but he's really a philosopher. And people think, well, Art of War, why would you even be thinking about that type of strategy? Well, he's actually trying to show people how you don't have to fight physically to actually win a war. You're able to do it strategically, and so you need to have this strategy. This you need to strategize to be able to harmonize, to be able to naturalize that into yourself. And then it comes to within your community, and that's the communitize. You need to bring it together or organize a group of people into a community. And this involves creating a shared sense of identity, purpose, and responsibility among the individuals. And the community could be your team, your office, your company. It could be a political party, a group, a branch of something, a family, a couple, a school, a church. Basically, it's a community. It's an ecosystem. And again, going back to when we were talking about synchronize, how these individuals are all important in the orbs of influence. This is where you pull that back in together, and everybody has a purpose. Everybody has a place. And so, again, the orbs of influence, tackling the curse of Babel, putting those puzzle pieces together in a way that makes sense, taking down silos, and reconfiguring tribes. And so those are the tribal aspects, are things that I learned when I was in the Middle East, and how you need to work with people and respect them, okay, in a way that they can respect you and bring things together. So ultimately, what this whole thing brings together is it democratizes things, and it makes things accessible or available to a wider range of people. So everybody feels like they're a part of the whole, and that they each have a piece of the puzzle, and they basically get excited and they get bought into the situation. And when you do that, you're able to actually, pull people together and actually pull things out of them that you couldn't do before.
That's a really interesting system. But it starts with, and I like the way that you've got this this working. It starts with yourself. And one of the things that you talk about is that I find kind of lacking right now is integrity, kindness, being affable to other ways of looking at things, and not being so set in our ways and thinking about the other, that they don't believe the same things that I do. Whereas if you stop and look and really try and understand where they're coming from, you have a much better shot. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I totally agree, and I'm really excited that you get what I'm trying to convey here, that it's somehow coming out.
Well, and because one of the things is integrity, honesty, caring. That is, in some cases, that's an art form. In some organizations, like the sales organization that I was part of, honesty and integrity were not words that they used, because in order to be a successful salesman and to make more money, you had to act without integrity, in some cases to some customers, because you were charging them more than you were charging another customer for the same exact product, and then lying to them about that.
Sure.
A company
So,
can't have integrity when they're asking you to lie.
well, so I've been in sales my whole life, and I've sold clothes and jewelry and automobiles. When I was at college and high school, and then my career has really been in technology transfer, and basically what that is taking all those research results from research universities that are paid for by the government, and everything, is trying to make it something that's valuable for people to use. It's solving societal problems. And so, but the only way you can solve those problems is to actually take these technologies that were developed and hand them over to an entrepreneur or to a company, and have them do the further development to make sure that technology actually can become like a piece of a phone. So if you look at your smartphone, the GPS system, the touch screen, the magnetic charging stations, those all came from technology transfer. Those came from university technology, okay, from inventors in universities that then was licensed out to an Apple or a Samsung or some other entrepreneur. And that's how societal problems are actually solved. And that actually came about because we have some really cool systems within our economic and political system where we have the Bayh-Dole Act. And this is getting a little bit technical, but the Bayh-Dole Act was in 1980. And this is when Senator Birch Bayh and Bob Dole reached across the aisle. They're both a Democrat and a Republican, respectively. And they reached across the aisle and they said, hey, we have all this money that's going in from the federal government, and it's just sitting on shelves. And the reason it was sitting on shelves was because the government owned all the technology that was developed under that funding. Well, the Bayh-Dole Act allowed these universities to then own the technology as long as they made a commitment to try and get it out to solve people's problems and then license it to companies. And so with being able to do that, they were able to actually bridge across the aisle and actually come to commonality between the two parties to solve a problem that actually catapulted the U.S. into being the innovation engine that it is today. I mean, you look at many of the innovative companies, and the majority of them are coming from the United States. And there's a reason for that because of this law. So getting back to where we're at today, when I was looking at COVID, and I was watching how COVID was really tearing up our society. And if these politicians really cared about the individuals, okay, the people, they would have maybe tried to approach it in more of a way that I'm trying to present here. And that is, you try to empathize with people, you try to help get people on the same page, speaking the same language, and have integrity and authenticity in regards to why we're doing certain things. Why are we wearing masks? Why are we getting the vaccines and everything? And if you're able to do that and actually show you care, you're able to pull them together, and maybe we wouldn't have had so many problems with this. And so I really believe that leaders are very, very important in regards to how they approach things. And if going back to your idea of a company that's selling something, and they're selling something to somebody for one price and somebody else for another price, and maybe if it's the same thing, that's not good. But maybe they're providing something extra to somebody else, and that's why it's a little bit more expensive. And they're not providing the same thing to another person. That's why it's cheaper. So if that's the reason, then that's high integrity and that's authentic. But if they're doing it, they're just trying to screw people over, then it's not going to last very long. And I've been in companies where they were really intent on just getting as much as they could for that moment, and not so much thinking about what's going to happen in 10 years. And a couple of those companies are just not around anymore. They ultimately lost their momentum and lost their market because people didn't trust them anymore. And I once I realized what they were like, I decided I wanted to get out of those companies and doing something that was more meaningful and everything. But it was from the top, and you need to have that idea that the leaders are supporting the people that they represent in that service mode, and then the people that are underneath them will want to come through. So another thing that happened with COVID was the Great Resignation. And the Great Resignation was coming about because people were not feeling like they were being appreciated within their companies, their organizations. And that, even though they were doing a job and punching the clock every day, they just weren't very happy with those jobs. And it's because they weren't given the keys to actually do their job the way they needed to. They weren't listened to in regards to how to make that work better and work more to facilitate with other groups. And these groups were just like what you were saying. They were kind of tagged to go against each other. Somehow this competition mode is thought of as being something that will help the company succeed. But I think it's actually the opposite. If you actually get people to work together and they see that vision, and that vision is this certain thing, and everybody sees how their piece goes into that, and then they try to figure out how they actually make it work better, then they're able to get something that's very meaningful, and everybody starts to appreciate their job. They feel appreciated. When they feel appreciated, they want to work harder, and when they work harder, then the company succeeds, and then ultimately everybody gets rewarded for that, and that's that mutually prosperous society that I'm thinking about.
Well, and it really works. By the way, there's a quote that I've got up here on the screen. I don't know if you know who this gentleman is. His name is John Taylor McEntire, and he's the CEO of Mutual Prosperity. Do you know who that guy is?
Yeah, I do.
And he says leaders do best with supporters who completely adopt the agenda. Supporters become diehard advocates when leaders shape conditions that inspire conviction. It's all about gaining buy-in. I couldn't agree more. And in a real small way, when I was general manager of a restaurant, one of those, it was a Mexican restaurant, and I brought everybody together for a meeting. I considered the two most important positions on the staff was the dishwasher and the hostess.
Mm.
And people would say, "No, well, the hostess, she's just, maybe a pretty gal or whatever, and she just stands up at the front. And the dishwasher, you never see him, and he's in the back. But if you don't have a great dishwasher, the dishes won't be clean. If the dishes aren't clean, you can't serve the customer. If the first impression of a customer when they walk in the door is somebody who's not very friendly as a hostess, you have an immediate negative perception of that place. So it isn't the people that make the most money, because these people don't make the most money, but it's the ones that need to be taken care of, and then great dishwashers become great cooks. Great hostesses become great waitresses, so it becomes a family type thing, and everybody works together for the betterment of the entire operation. Is that brilliant, or is that brilliant?
That's brilliant. And I have a little anecdote that goes along with that from what I learned in Japan. So uh, Japanese are very well known for their gift giving, and their gifts are usually very nice. But what happens is that the packaging that they have is even nicer, and so they believe that anything from start to finish needs to be completely finished. It's nothing is frayed, nothing is left unguarded. So if you have a package that is beautifully wrapped, and it's something that somebody's going to be excited because they see this box, it's beautifully wrapped, then they open it up, and everything that they open up is just exciting for them, and then they get to the actual gift, and the gift itself is beautiful, but the packaging itself is just so important. So that's where you're talking about the hostess and the dishwasher. They're part of that packaging. The dishwasher, if they're doing their job well, then the dishes are all going to be clean, sparkling. The tables are going to look nice, and then the hostesses are the one that are at the present they're presenting the people to the restaurant, and they're the present. They're the ones that are helping the wrapping come undone, and slowly but surely. But you have all these different pieces. So I couldn't agree any more with you than what you said, because that's absolutely true. Everybody from everybody inside the organization is important, and it's oftentimes these ones that have these what seemingly minor details that are actually the most important to make people actually appreciate that restaurant in the case that you were talking about.
And everybody recognized that, and when I explained it to everybody that way, they got it. and we had buy-in because the waitresses were saying, I hate it when I have to come in and wipe down all the silverware in my section because all of it's dirty and replace half of it because the dishwasher's not doing their job. Or I get to a table and the person says, your hostess is a bitch, excuse the expression, but goodness gracious. Everybody appreciates that because the whole idea is to make as much money for everybody in the building as possible. And the only way to do that is to bring more customers into the building.
Yeah, and so these going back to my example about the Filipinos, they're they're the ones who would be doing the hostessing and the dishwashing and everything in these different organizations. These big hotels and stuff when I was in the Middle East and where not. So they're trained to actually take pride in their activities, and because they take pride in that, and because they're happy about it, and they're trying to be service oriented, and to actually make it part of themselves, to give of themselves to somebody else. The attitude is just invigorating, and it's just you just want to appreciate them. I remember when I was in Doha, and I was at this I was at a mall, and I went to this sandwich shop, and the shop wasn't very busy, and I had ordered my sandwich, and there was only one person there. And this guy, he was a Filipino, and took my order, and he was very nice about that. But when he was actually making my sandwich, okay, it was very artistic, okay? The way he was putting everything together, the way he put the mayonnaise on, the way he put the vegetables on and the meat and every single part of it. And he was taking so much pride in putting this thing together that although the sandwich cost me like $4, okay, I gave him a $10 tip because I was so appreciative of how much he took of himself to make that be something that was momentous. It was not just something thrown together, but it was something that he would even want to eat. Okay, and you could tell that he was making it in the regards to as a piece of art, and it really was a piece of art. It really touched my heart, and I've taken that idea, and I want to incorporate that more in myself. And I don't know that I'm as good as he is, but I'm trying to get there. And I think that for how little that person is paid, being this sandwich maker in this big chain of restaurants, he was so important that I actually went and let the manager know that what had happened, and hopefully that was helpful to him and everything. But I think that's where we need to be showing appreciation to everybody that's around us, people that are servicing us, people that we're working with. We need to make sure that there's this give and take, and that we're always not just taking from them and saying, you do this, you do that, and I want it this way, and oh, that's not right. No, say, hey, this is great, but maybe we need to change this a little bit here. And the reason for this is because of this, but I'm really appreciative of what you're doing. And if we show that type of appreciation, we're going to be that much better as a community and everything. And maybe if we're able to put this into our own lives, this political divide that we have right now, which is totally eating us apart, maybe we can actually see where we have more commonalities than we have that are differences. And those commonalities are what we need to pull together. It's what Senators Bai and Dole did when they went across the aisle, and they created this innovation ecosystem within the United States that people they want. So I actually I worked for the Japanese government, the Japanese patent office, and helped them put together a technology transfer office in Kobe after the big earthquake there. And this was their way of helping to evolve things. Once they got the physical infrastructural things put in place, they got it all cleaned up. They got it rebuilt because it was just completely demolished. Now they had to work on the economy. And so Japan actually adopted a Bayh-Dole Act equivalent for Japan because they wanted to have that same type of innovation ecosystem developed for them. And so that was a really clear indication to me that there are some things that are being done right, okay? And we need to make sure that we are keeping those things intact, but that we're utilizing those tools that we have to make sure that our personal lives and our group lives and our communities are actually growing, and that we're giving to each other, and we're able to take from each other something that becomes better because these puzzle pieces all are meshing well together.
I love what you're saying, and I know you've worked all over the world, and it hurts me to say that I don't think that we, speaking of the United States of America, is right now acting in our best interest, in our best self, for all of us working together, moving forward. A lot of us don't take pride in the work that we do. That we don't take, regardless of what it is, making a sandwich into a work of art. If you look at it, if you have that perspective, rather than slapping together something that costs $4.50, um, it changes things. It changes who you are. Why don't we? And you, like I said, you've been all over the world. You've been in the Middle East. You've been in Asia. Uh, why are we having such a tough time here right now? Do you think?
Well, I think it's a couple things. I think that social media has a big part to deal with what's happened the last 10, 15 years. Okay. Because that's when the downfall really started happening. Because social media makes it so that we're always trying to compare ourselves with others. And so when we compare, we're not comparing equals to equals. We're comparing, somebody who happens to be really expert in something, and then we don't feel like we're expert. So we feel like we have to tear them down. And so there's something wrong with that mentality. Social media should be something where we're actually, genuinely telling, our stories, telling, our problems, telling our successes, telling, about ourselves, but then we're also listening to others as they're telling about themselves, and that we're each cheering everybody on. And you don't see that very much in social media. Now you do in certain groups, but when you get different polar opposites, then all of a sudden we're always just tearing people apart rather than building people up. And so this positive talk radio, which you have, is a great aspect of social media. Okay, so it's trying to get social media on the right track by having discussions like this that help us understand, what value each person has, and how we can get on the same page, and how we can, recognize, where we go together as a community. And so it's a give and take, but it's kind of gone off on this really wild track where, we have to hit things, and we have a cancellation culture, and cancel culture, and everything. I think we've gotten away from what made America great in the first place. And although there are some things that need to change, it doesn't mean we need to throw away the system. We need to work with those things that need to change, recognize the blessings that we have because of the freedoms we have, and figure out how we make it so that everybody feels more a part of the fabric of America as they should. And that's what hasn't been there. And we need to pull people together in unity rather than showing, all these differences, and why one group is worse than somebody else, and how they had what they had to do with making things bad. What we need to do is try and figure out how we can all work together to make things sync, and communitize things so that we're actually on the same page.
And I love the work that you're doing, by the way, with sync, and when we're going to go over that again in a moment. But I did want to point this out. And you're right, it is social media. But one of the things about social media that's got to change is they set it up to get this done, to get this to happen. And they
Yes.
they set it up by creating the click system, as what I call it, which means that the more clicks that you get for a particular point of view or something that you say, regardless of whether or not you're an expert in your field or not,
Or
if you
whether
have,
it's true or not.
or whether what?
Whether it's true or not.
Or whether it's, well, oftentimes, the more sensational it is, the more clicks that you get. And the
Yeah.
more clicks that you get, the more money that you're liable to make. And so we are incentivizing people to lie, to exaggerate, to tell untruths, and things like that. As an example, you remember John F. Kennedy Jr., who died in the plane accident. There are people online that are telling other people who are listening to them that he's still alive and
Mm.
he's going to become Donald Trump's vice president. And it's like, oh, come on, please, really? But it's all because of the clicks, and it's all because of what they think that they can make as long as nobody holds them accountable. And that's
Doesn't that go back to what you were talking about with salespeople?
yes,
Salespeople, all they want to do, if somebody's only thinking about how much they can sell and how much they can make, then it doesn't really matter to them what they say. And we see that in our politics on both sides of the aisle right now. There's all these accusations going across and everything, and a lot of it's not even true. And what we need to do is get people back into being, uh, centered on issues that have high integrity and have authenticity, and that will bring us back to a place where we can actually rectify some of these relationship issues that we have.
if you believe that integrity is not important and you are willing to say anything that you can to bolster your point of view, and you don't care about the truthfulness of it or the integrity that you're displaying because of it, then and if it's happening at the highest levels of our government of the people that we have elected, then it's okay that somehow I don't understand this part, but somehow that makes it okay for everybody else to do it. That- and and I think that long term it's going to come to roost that we've got to change that, which is why I love having you on the show, because your system is working and will succeed if people will just do it. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And I wanted to get back to the authenticity part, because authenticity is really something that we have to do internally. So when I was in again Doha in Qatar, um, I was at a grocery store one day, and in the Middle East, a lot of the countries, their populations, their national populations are 10% of the population, and then everybody else 90% is people from all over the place. And so um, I was in a line to get my vegetables weighed. So you get your vegetables, and then you have to go to a weighing counter, and then they weigh it, and they price it, and then you take that all that stuff with your other stuff you purchased to the cash register. And so you have to wait in these lines, but uh, everybody is not like they are in the West, in the U.S. or the U.K. or Canada, whatnot, where you kind of automatically get in a line and where you're at and everything. But people were trying to get in front of them and everything. And one thing that I learned, but because I did something that I'm not proud of, and that was that I called somebody out and said, "Hey, you know, you're not in line here. These other people and myself are in line before you." And then I kept on calling him out and saying, "Hey, you need to go back." But he reverted and just kind of like said, "Stop it, don't say anything." And I realized that I actually made him lose face. Okay. And so it would have been better for me to actually tap him on the shoulder, personally tell him that, hey, everybody else is waiting here too. Everybody else has something else, someplace else they need to be. But if I would have done that, then he wouldn't have felt bad. And now maybe he feels bad towards me or towards Americans. And so I realized that as I was understanding the cultures more, and this goes back into the silo thinking and the tribal thinking and everything, how you need to make sure that people are able to actually save face even in the fact that they have made a mistake. And so what we have in our world right now is that one side wants to say that somebody's done something wrong because they actually don't like the other things that they're saying. Okay. And they're pointing everything out, but the fact of the matter is that if we're always pointing out the negative, we're never going to get to the positive. And and the fact is that they tell the negative, but they never tell the positive of what's going on. And
Nope.
we need to be balanced in those types of efforts. So another thing that I have, my sync thing says developing ecosystems with sync, but I also have balancing ecosystems with sync. So it's the same thing. You've got to balance things out. You need to. You don't see that on the website or anything, but that's another thing that I use in my teaching and my coaching, is that there needs to be a level of balance, and that balance needs to point out the truth, but you don't have to be negative about it. You don't have to tell people outright, like I was doing there, and I was being a Karen maybe, and I realized that I that was ugly, and so we have to recognize within ourselves that we have things to clean up, and if we don't clean those things up, how can we expect others to clean up their stuff? And it's through our examples and our caring and our empathy that actually helps pull people together. And I think that's how we actually clean this societal part up. We show people that we care, and then if they feel like they're being cared for, then they're going to start caring for you, but also for others. So it's contagious, and it's contagious the opposite way too. But we need to get that contagion into a point where it's a good contagion, and that we're bringing good into the world rather than bringing this negativity.
It is, and it is so hard right now because there are people who, in it, there are people that say things just because they want to be sensational, but there are other people who actually believe some of the things, some of the falsehoods that are being told to them, and so it's important that we all take a step back, take a deep breath, do the research, find out why, uh, and not just say, I saw it on the internet, so that's why. You got to There used to be something called an encyclopedia, and you can go and look at various sources. Never, a good journalist will never take a one source story and run with it. They
Absolutely.
always look for 2, 3, 4 sources to corroborate that the story is true, or mostly true. Um, and it's important that we all do that. And it's important for you and I to have a discussion like this,
Yeah.
because we can help people realize, maybe, that there's a different way and that they can care for one another, even if we don't all agree. We don't have to all agree.
Mhm. Absolutely. We may
Yeah.
not agree on the details about how we get there, but we can agree on the the ultimate goal that we have, and agree on maybe a mode of going forward to do that, and then agree on where we can allow some personality to come in, or differences to show up. But it's those differences again that I believe are the reason why each one of us is different. Okay. If we were all the same, we would be boring. If we were all the same, we would not have all the products and services that we do. Okay. We
Good
are
point.
we are different for reasons, and those reasons have got to be accentuated, and people have got to be appreciated for the part that they're playing within their organization and within their community. And as we recognize those differences, and appreciate the differences and what they're doing, then we're able to actually help those people feel good about themselves. And again, that's that mutually prosperous attitude that we can create, when, even though a CEO makes so much more money than one of the lower workers, they can all feel like they're part of the whole, and they can feel like they've really produced something, if they feel like they're being appreciated.
Exactly, and, like the auto worker strike that's going on right now is a prime example of people that are looking at CEOs that are making $30 million, and they're making what they were making before, and maybe 5% a year, and they just don't fundamentally feel that that's fair, and they're probably right,
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well,
and we as go ahead.
I you know, when I don't know how we actually solve this issue, but you have these these entrepreneurs who do something really creative. So another technology transfer story is actually Google, and Google came from Stanford University, and the Stanford boys, the Google boys, they created this algorithm, and the algorithm, it was patented, and this is what created Google what it is today, as a $2.1 trillion company. That puts it at the valuation of the 10th economy in the world, which is Korea. Okay, so
Jeez.
so you think about the wealth that these individuals have, okay, compared to the others, but they didn't do this themselves. They came up with the spark of the idea, which was really, really important. They came up with the leadership to actually get that thing to be put together, and everything. So there should be some value placed on them, because this is used all over the world. But all the people that were underneath them, they need to be appreciated. And Google's pretty good at showing appreciation to their people, with the different benefits that they have and everything. But still, there needs to be some way of making that divide less visible. Or why do some people need to have the amount that a country would be making in their bank? There needs to be something there. And I'm not saying that we should tax them incredible amounts, but there should be something where, when we're getting something from society, which is all these people working for us and building something, then we should be giving something back to society that is actually beneficial to them, rather than continuing to buy those yachts and whatnot. It should be something where, again, it's mutually prosperous, and it doesn't have to be equal, but it does need to be something that people feel appreciated, and that appreciation does come in the form of money and benefits and things. But there needs to be some way to help people feel like they're really being appreciated for their part of the puzzle, which has made that great wealth for that company.
Was a presidential candidate several years ago when they were talking about the fact that he didn't pay any taxes, and he said, "Well, I'm just good at manipulating the system." And I was thinking to myself, okay, so you built this company, you didn't build the roads that your employees drive on to get to the company. You didn't build the electrical grid so that the employees could have a nice warm house to live in and have warm water to shower so that they could take a shower and come to your facility. So there's lots of things that you did not pay for that you're taking advantage of, that ultimately you should be willing to give back a piece. At least that's my viewpoint.
Yeah. So, but that same person, I believe I know who you're talking about. He was saying that everybody else that's in that class in the elite, they're doing the very same thing. So it's not that that person is doing it themselves. It's that that's just the way that the system is made. And so the system does need to change, because there's no reason why somebody shouldn't use the system the way that it was created. But the system itself is flawed.
Yeah. And yet at the same time, we can't get 100 people in a room, or in this case 500 people in a room, and get them all to agree on anything.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch Braveheart?
Yes. Yep.
One of my favorite lines in that movie is, "They can't agree on the color of shit," and that's I can say that because this is not FCC regulated,
Yeah. Yeah.
but but that's where we're at now. With it, they can't agree on the color of shit, so nobody's gonna agree on much anything.
Yep. No, I totally agree with that. But I think that, again, going back to the sync philosophy and this methodology, if we put it down to the real basic parts, you're trying to synchronize things so that you've got the community, you're bridging gaps, you're building the accord, you're creating this consensus, and you're doing that from starting with yourself as the person, and you're starting from a point of trying to have high integrity and authenticity, and being empathetic and helping people understand how important it is to be kind and caring and to be a servant leader. And And then that introspection that we have, being able to recognize when we make a flaw. So like I made a mistake. I need to correct that because it hurts somebody else. And then you need to naturalize that by making it integral and internal and recognizing the community and strategizing in regards to how you actually make that happen and appreciate that diversity. And it's that strategy that's going to pull that diversity together. And then you need to communitize that. And the communitizing is actually, building the team, building the office, building the company, making sure that everybody's getting on the same page. Everybody has a purpose here on earth. Let's make sure that everybody feels like they have a place and they feel like they're being appreciated. And by doing that, we're able to actually create a system that actually creates value on top of itself and augments everybody in the midterm as we go towards the long term for this mutually prosperous society.
And who was it? Somebody said something. The gospel according to Bruce Springsteen. right before he goes into the song Born to Run, he says, nobody's going to make it unless everybody makes it. And that is a real, none of us is going to be able to make it to where we want to go individually. It takes a village, it's collective, and we all need to work together for the betterment of everybody. And if we did that, and when we do that, because I believe that we are going to do that, may be a while, but it's going to be people like you, people like me, that are going to make some things like that happen. John, if somebody wants to work with you, if somebody wants to you to coach them and to help them develop their own sync system in their business or their personal life, how do they get a hold of you?
So at www.mutualprosperity.com is my website, and that has all the different tools, different services that I provide.
And yes, and you can get a hold of him, and it's I highly recommend it because you have been around the world. I think that your way of looking at things is very forward thinking, and it's something that it will happen over time naturally, because when something doesn't work for long enough, people make the decision to change it. I just don't want it to go down that rabbit hole so far that it takes a while to come back.
Absolutely. I agree with you totally.
So I thank you very much for being here, and you're going to need to come back, John Taylor, and we're going to have to talk more. Will you do that?
Oh, absolutely. I really appreciate it, Kevin. And I appreciate, Positive Talk Radio, your show and everything. It's awesome to be able to talk positive and actually try to bring some brightness to the world.
Well, together and with all of us, we can do it. We just have to make that decision that we're going to. And once we make that decision and start moving forward, I think change will be quick. It'll be exciting, and nobody needs to be left behind.
I totally agree.
So, John, thank you so much. If you wait right there, I'll be right back. Hey, thanks for enjoying this episode all the way to the end. Please give us a like and subscribe to this channel. This has been a production of PositiveTalkRadio.net. Please visit our website, oddly named PositiveTalkRadio.net, for more details about us and our mission, which is to provide great positive programming designed to inspire us all. I'm Kevin McDonald, and I'm proud of these shows, and I truly hope that you'll like them and share them with friends and family. So on behalf of our entire team, remember, be kind to one another, because each other's all we got.